a spiral in a seashell, the symmetry of a sunflower, the proportions of a Greek temple built 2,000 years before anyone could have calculated them. The same patterns keep appearing in nature, in temples, in the symbols of every tradition we've explored on this channel. This is sacred geometry, and it's not mystical decoration. According to the traditions that used it, this is the language the universe was written in, the blueprint underneath everything. Today, we're decoding the patterns, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. Sacred geometry is the idea that certain geometric shapes and ratios are not just mathematical, they're meaningful. They appear so consistently across nature, art, and architecture that ancient traditions concluded they were built into the fabric of reality itself. This isn't a modern New Age invention. Plato believed that the physical world was structured by 5 perfect solids, what we now call the Platonic solids. Pythagoras taught that number and proportion were the foundation of all things. And when the builders of medieval cathedrals laid out their floor plans, they used the same geometric ratios that appear in the petals of a flower. The question isn't whether these patterns exist. They obviously do. The question is, does their existence mean something? The Kabbalists thought so. So did the Hermeticists. So did the Freemasons. Every tradition we've covered on this channel treats geometry as something more than math. They treat it as a window into the structure of creation. Let me show you why. Start with a single circle. Unity, the infinite. The Ein Sof of Kabbalah, the boundless, undifferentiated source. Now draw a second circle, overlapping the first so that the edge of each passes through the center of the other. The space where they overlap is called the Vesica Piscis, the vessel of the fish. This shape is the first act of creation in geometric terms, from unity, duality, from one, two. And from the space between them, everything else emerges. The Vesica Piscis generates the proportions for the equilateral triangle, the square root of 2, the square root of 3. It's the geometric seed from which all other sacred shapes grow. You'll find this shape in the doorways of Gothic cathedrals, in the halos of medieval religious paintings, and in the space between the 2 pillars of a Masonic lodge, Jachin and Boaz, which we covered last week. Keep adding circles in the same pattern, and you get the flower of life. 19 interlocking circles, each one the same size, arranged in perfect hexagonal symmetry. This pattern has been found carved into temple walls across the world, from ancient Egypt to China to medieval European churches. The oldest known example is at the Temple of Osiris at Abydos in Egypt. It was burned or etched into granite with a precision that still puzzles archaeologists. Why does this pattern show up everywhere? Because nested inside it are the blueprints for every Platonic solid, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, and the geometric ratios that govern everything from DNA to galaxies. Divide a line so that the ratio of the whole to the larger part equals the ratio of the larger part to the smaller. That ratio is approximately 1.618. The Greeks called it phi. Renaissance artists called it the divine proportion. It appears in the spiral of a nautilus shell, in the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, in the proportions of the human face and body, in the branching of trees, in the spiral arms of galaxies. It was used to design the Parthenon. It governs the proportions of Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. It appears in the dimensions of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Is it a coincidence that the same ratio appears at every scale of nature? Pythagoras didn't think so. He believed it was evidence that the universe was composed by a mathematical intelligence. The Kabbalists would say it's the fingerprint of divine emanation, the same pattern repeating from Keter down to Malkuth. Extract certain lines from the flower of life, and you get Metatron's cube, a pattern named after the archangel who, according to Jewish mystical tradition, sits at the throne of God and maintains the flow of energy between the divine and the physical. Inside this single pattern, you can find all 5 Platonic solids, every perfect 3-dimensional form that exists. Plato associated these with the classical elements, the tetrahedron with fire, the cube with earth, the octahedron with air, the icosahedron with water, and the dodecahedron with the cosmos itself. This is where geometry becomes theology. The same diagram contains the building blocks of all physical form, and it's named after an angel who guards the threshold between heaven and earth. Now you can start to see why every tradition on this channel uses geometry as a sacred language. The cathedral builders of the Middle Ages, many of whom were connected to Masonic guilds, designed their churches around sacred proportions. The floor plans of Chartres, Notre Dame, and Canterbury encode the Vesica Piscis, the golden ratio, and the flower of life. The rose windows are geometric mandalas, prayers made of glass and mathematics. In Freemasonry, the compass and square are tools of geometry. The compass draws circles, the infinite. The square measures right angles, the finite. The entire Masonic system is built on the idea that geometry is the language through which the divine speaks. The letter G at the center of the square and compass stands for geometry and for God, because in this tradition, they are the same thing. And in Kabbalah, the Tree of Life is itself a geometric pattern. 10 spheres arranged in 3 columns, connected by 22 paths. When you overlay the tree onto the flower of life, it fits perfectly. The same pattern, the same proportions, the same underlying structure. This is what the Hermeticists meant when they wrote, "As above, so below." The geometry of the cosmos is the geometry of the cell. The pattern in the temple is the pattern in the atom. There is one language, and everything speaks it. Sacred geometry isn't just an ancient curiosity, it's the thread that connects everything we've explored on this channel. The Tree of Life is geometry. The Masonic Lodge is geometry. The Hermetic principles are geometry expressed as philosophy. Even alchemy, which we'll explore next, uses geometric symbols to map the transformation of matter and soul. The ancients didn't worship shapes. They recognized that certain patterns appear so consistently at so many scales that they must be saying something about the nature of reality itself. And they built their temples, their rituals, and their inner practices around that recognition. Next week, we're stepping into the alchemist's laboratory, not to make gold, but to understand what the alchemists were really doing when they drew their diagrams of transformation. Because alchemy isn't chemistry, it's sacred geometry applied to the soul. This is The Hidden Thread. Subscribe if you want to follow it.